We are living in an extraordinary time, and we can't even begin to talk about the election, the candidates, without noting the powerful transits of Pluto and Neptune to the nation's chart. The only other time we've had these exact transits was during the period of the Revolution and leading right up to the Civil War. So the parallels are fascinating. And really, we're in a double engine revolution. On one hand, there's a deep transformation of the nation's identity, much like in the revolution with Pluto and Capricorn. And there's also a transformation of the nation's soul with Neptune and Pisces, and a similar period leading up to the Civil War. So let's take a look at this dual engine revolution of sorts, because this is going to be a very rich period in our nation's history, and really a time to savor and ride change. The Plutonian part of this revolution really started with Pluto's entrance into Capricorn in 2008. Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth, and it will compel us to come to terms with elements of our nature as a nation that aren't that easy to face. Pluto stirs up issues of power, government, autonomy, and how much authority government may or may not exercise. In essence, a total transformation of the nation's identity. It shoves into the light that which has become toxic and no longer serves, so that something new can emerge. It stirs the nation's inner cauldron, which is now boiling over everywhere in frustration with the status quo. All we need to do is to return to the revolution for some serious insight, as this was the only other time Pluto was in Capricorn in the nation's chart. The revolution wasn't a simple one-sided phenomena, but the one thing it was a struggle for power. And the one thing it did was to shove into the light the uses and abuses of power and the underlying motives which fueled it. Exactly like it's been doing for the past 10 years in this country. And so these two periods, the revolution and now, with Pluto and Capricorn, are perhaps the few times in history where people feel they can really participate in reshaping the society and casting aside outmoded ways of governing and being governed. And as Pluto completes its transit through Capricorn by 2024, our country's Pluto return will have completed an entire cycle, suggesting a complete reevaluation, reassessment, and subsequent renewal of fundamental values of our founding fathers and the Constitution. In addition to issues of power, Pluto's return to its natal place in the earthy second house also suggests a serious reappraisal of our country's resources, chiefly the use and abuse of natural resources as well as environmental concerns. So while the Plutonian part of this revolution is about survival and power, the Neptunian part of this revolution is about a national spiritual crisis. With Neptune in Pisces from about 2011 to 2025, we mark the end of a 160-year cycle and the beginning of a new one, where we are entering a profound period of psychological renewal and change, a shift in consciousness that we haven't experienced for 160 years. And this new growth demands that our old self be shed. Neptune stirs the collective unconscious psyche's deepest feelings and longings. Neptunian transits are crises of the spirit, and in this case, a collective spirit that has grown tired of rules, limits, and boundaries. It makes us aware of how world-weary and fatigued we've become in our day-to-day lives, and how so many things have become vapid, meaningless, and intolerable. We want to experience beauty, the kind of beauty that connects us all. We want to throw out all the crap and get down to what really matters. Neptune transits facilitate this shift by dissolving structures that straitjacket the collective soul, leaving outworn beliefs and values behind that no longer serve. We're living in a time with an uncanny resemblance to the emotional and spiritual climate between 1850 and 1860, right before the Civil War, when Neptune was in Pisces and opposing the nation's ascendant, which is exactly where we are now. The country at that time was on the verge of war, which was only averted by the Compromise of 1850, a series of legislative bargains over Western territories and slavery designed to appease growing sectional tensions. But the Compromise of 1850 achieved the exact opposite, and Americans were growing increasingly unwilling to accept limits, rules, laws, or any kind of traditional boundaries. Remember, Neptune stirs deep emotions. It dissolves the boundaries between ourselves and others, so it was awakening deep collective unconscious feelings, a tremendous unrest simmering in our nation's soul. So this is a very similar place, feeling-wise, that this country is in now. The fear, the uncertainty, all brewing at the nation's core. These collective unconscious feelings then exert with tremendous force in the form of projections. And there is no other arena quite like the political arena where these feelings get expressed. That is why ideological movements are par for the course under Neptune transits, because they are deeply imbued with emotion, a past and future fantasy. They're all fantasy. And there is this romantic vision of paradise lost and regained through the creation of a perfect society. Ideologies can be politically left or right. Some are peaceable and some are not, but they all are ideas which involve the redemption of a downtrodden collective, which then rises up and overthrows the persecutor. Sometimes they appear as the aspiration of the perfect Muslim state and the promise of a quick trip to paradise for those who blow themselves up in the name of Allah. Sometimes it appears as a superhero grandpa who will fight corruption to restore decency and integrity to all. Sometimes it appears as the hijack of an entire political party, a three-ring circus for the channeling of collective frustrations and fantasy. And sometimes it's just an overgrown and overstuffed Cupid doll, uplifter of all who are also unrecognized, suppressed, and deeply in need of some self-worth. This passage from Liz Green Book's Neptune states this phenomena powerfully. Arnold Toynbee, in Study of History, makes some relevant observations on the characteristic responses of a society threatened by the disintegration of existing structures and values. He suggests that the experience of spiritual uncertainty and moral defeat in a nation may propel its citizens into pursuing a utopian chimera as a substitute for an intolerable present. In just this way does the individual in the throes of uncertainty and defeat often turn to Neptune's world and Neptune's magic talismans, because life has become intolerable. Toynbee goes on to state that in the twin movements of Archaism and Futurism, Archaism being an attempt to return to some imaginary past golden age, and Futurism a frenzied leap toward some fantasy future, can be seen two apparently opposite but fundamentally utopian or Neptunian collective attempts to escape reality. Both ignore the necessary compromises and adjustments that are needed to create a tolerable present to deal with the here and now. Feelings are pretty powerful, and in particular, collective unconscious ones. So in part 2 of this video, we're going to take a look at Clinton, Trump, and Sanders and the lay of the land politically, from the Democratic and Republican conventions right up through Election Day. So I hope you'll join me.